Hello, I'm Glenn Mathewson with BuildingCodeCollege.com. I received an email from ICC asking to contribute to a survey about energy efficiency, and I noticed it mentioned a grant from the Department of Energy. The DOE provides a lot of research and educational support on this subject. Even I got to present some free webinars last year with similar funding from the Colorado Energy Office. I found some interesting history about how long the feds have been supporting this subject, but sadly, I found it through the death of my father. As a renowned Regents Professor Emeritus in Engineering Geology at Texas A&M, you can bet he had a half-century collection of books. Emotionally, I scoured the collection for the place where my buildings would meet his geology, Slabs on Ground by the Federal Housing Administration. And quite sentimentally, the books all bear his professional seal. But also extracting water and depositing waste is another place where we meet. So there's this one from the U.S. Department of Health, Education, and Welfare in the 1960s. You got drainage and sanitation from London with a really cool chapter on legal notes. But the focus on this video is the book about residential energy conservation. I was surprised to find this, but I discovered it was originally in the collection of the man who hired my dad to the university in 1971. There's a lot of history in this book about the birth of energy codes, but what I want to show you is this foundational paragraph. Like it or not, progress costs money, and in 1975 that money was coming from the Energy Policy and Conservation Act. This is the funding that brought together the same foundational players in developing energy codes that we see today. What's also cool, and where we're going to go next, is in the paths to compliance. Translated to how we refer to it today, you've got the prescriptive, you've got the total UA alternative, and you've got the performance alternative. This is what led to the first model energy code in 1977, published by CABO, the Council of American Building Officials. I don't have that edition, but if you look at the foreword in the 1983 edition, you see that it was developed through the organizations and the federal support described in the previous book. Now, going to the table of contents, you can see the subtle changes to titles, but the same three compliance paths: performance, total UA, and prescriptive. At the same time the Model Energy Code was being revised and published, BOCA, the Building Officials and Code Administrators International, were publishing their own energy code. Interestingly, though, they were one of the organizations in CABO, so they had their hand in two model energy codes. BOCA laid out the same three compliance paths, but in a different way. Rather than three separate chapters like the model code, they had the prescriptive and total UA in one section and the performance path in another. In this one section, they provide both the prescriptive path in the first half, and then they describe the total UA compliance path in the second half. The performance path was put in the section on alternatives. If we look at the last of the model energy codes in 1995, we will see the same three paths organized the same as they were in 1983, though the details have certainly since changed. The first International Energy Conservation Code was published in 1998, and this was after the formation of the International Code Council by the same three code organizations involved in the development of the Model Energy Code. This new code was organized similar to the BOCA code, in that performance had its own chapter, and the prescriptive and UA compliance methods were together in another chapter. But there appears to be more than just two options when you come to this chapter. In the combining of all these codes, there were about 4 different methods as subsections provided here, and this is the first time we see the term prescriptive show up as one of the methods. The 2000 edition was the first one widely published and more widely adopted, but it and the 2003 editions really didn't change very much from the 1998 in terms of the organization of the paths. They separated the prescriptive path into its own chapters, but retained the somewhat complex 4 varieties of the total UA method. Big modifications were made after the 2003 edition, and the book was cut by more than half. In the 2006, the original 3 compliance paths, as we would also recognize today, were organized in one residential chapter. Total UA was just a simple subsection, similar to the way it was presented in the BOCA code, and the performance path was included in a section at the end of the residential chapter. The 2009 edition started growing in page number again, but there were no real changes to the concepts of the 3 compliance paths. In the 2012 edition, the organization changed, but not the number or type of compliance paths. Commercial provisions and residential provisions were completely divided into 2 parts of the book, essentially as if having 2 code books in one. Now, shamefully, I don't have a copy of the 2015 edition, but I can show you in the 2018 edition the new and 4th compliance path that it introduced. The Energy Rating Index path recognizes the popular use of above code programs using HERS ratings. So this path equates that rating method to minimum code expectations so that one program can both achieve code and above code verification. So there's a pretty casual look at how federal grants have been involved with developing energy conservation codes since the very beginning. We can also see that the 3 compliance paths in the original research went through some changes over the last 4 decades, but ended up pretty close to where they started. Now, I wonder what the 2021 code will provide. I hope you enjoyed that little bit of history, and I hope you'll connect with me on LinkedIn and Facebook, or check out my online school at buildingcodecollege.com. Thanks, and have a great day.